Nathan Robinson. He wrote an article about Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi, more about Glenn Greenwald, but both of them really. And he makes a few criticisms and accusations, and then they had the bad faith kind of debate. I watched the first part, but Sam told me the second part was uploaded this morning, but I haven't seen it. So you'll tell me what it's about. But here, Sam, these are what I find to be the main points of contention, and then we'll go through some of the quotes that Nathan Robinson has put in his article. So based on the article and the 40 minutes I've listened to, one point of contention is just Glenn going on Fox and Matt Taibbi going on Fox and the whole thing there. The second one is the degree to which the Democratic and Republican Party are different and how different are the consequences of their ruling. The third one being that Trump is just the worst criminal president of all time, just like an insanely unique danger. And then the fourth one is just, even in the video, I thought that Nathan Robinson makes a bunch of criticisms and points where he doesn't agree with Glenn Greenwald's analysis, but which is fine, they don't agree, but I feel like they don't support necessarily his overall thing. They're just, you think this, I think that. So there's a lot of examples there. So, but yeah, before we get into it more, what do you think? Did you find that these are the main points of contention between the two of them?
Yeah, and more fundamentally, maybe what is the role of a journalist and where should he or she put his focus? But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything you want to add there. So, I mean, one thing that I think is just a big trap that people should not fall into, and that is the Republican and Democrats are so similar that when you start trying, I mean, to me, they're just good cop, bad cop. It's literally the same thing, like a good cop, bad cop. They have this dynamic, but they all have the same objective, right? They both have the same objective, whether it's the good cop or the bad cop. And in this case, the Democrat and the Republicans, overall, they're working towards the same path. So when you start trying to make differences and differentiate between them, you got to just know that it's just at the level so like, they're just so similar and they're moving towards such a same objective that when you start saying, oh, they're bad at worse than this and bad and that, I mean, it's even, for instance, when they keep on saying he was so much worse on climate and all this, right? I mean, really have to start looking at one by one and the impact that it had, and that's Trump. So I think that's just one big trap, which makes kind of that conversation hard because it's just at such a detailed level, the differences on the overall impact that these two have.
I don't think so. To be fair, I think at the very, very local level, yeah, there are differences. At the national, federal, global level, no, there isn't. And I mean,
and here we're talking about
just before
level.
you, like with Nathan Robinson, very much in opposition to our last segment with Kyle Kansky, I'm very happy to. I don't think he's actually I think he's wrong on all his points. And he's not even honest, to be completely, I think so. But that's neither here or there. I can't see into people's minds or anything. But he's, I don't understand what you're defending here. They are the same.
What I'm
Democratic
defending?
and Republican Party.
Or he is.
Like you're saying that there is a, mini, well,
no, that's not my point.
I thought you're...
Oh, yeah, I'm saying that, sure. I mean, of course, they're not 100% the same. So there are some small differences, but it's at just such a lower, like, it's just like, after you talk about just how similar they are, and their objective is the same. That's kind of my point with the good cop, bad cop analogy. They both want to achieve the same thing. The good and the bad cop have the exact same objective.
Well, he would say internally, he would say, for example, the Republicans want to kill all the black people, but Democrats don't.
Yeah, I mean, is that true? And in practice, does it turn out being any different? That's like the second point to make there. But then,
yeah. Well, to be fair, I think I think this person has. I don't know. I don't think he. That's actually. Let me just put this out there. Just get it off of my chest. Especially after watching the second episode. In the first episode, Brianna Joy Gray mentions that apparently he was one of the first people that published her. And So they had a working relationship, as well as Glenn. So they are both like all three had a working relationship at some point. But she's way too nice to him, and this man is engaged as if he's like, as if I think yeah, as if to be honest, he's a political theorist or he's a good political analyst who hasn't been. This is a man. He wrote a couple of months ago an article criticizing Crystal Ball for having a show with Sagar and Jetty, again for enabling you're criticizing Democrats and you're enabling Nazis, literally like enabling, and because populism right has in America right now, and Nazi socialism was a populist thing. These are the same. And then this is a person who was axed by Guardian as a regular columnist because of a joke tweet he did. And then he deleted that joke tweet. Still, Guardian didn't want to have anything to do with him. And then a lot of leftists defended him, and he went on all their podcasts, including Katie Halper, who is, I assume, one of the people he's very critical, because he's very critical of Matt Taibbi, and he's writing, and Matt Taibbi does a lot of things with Katie Halper. And after that, again, he's come on Brianna Greyjoy, and he talks about he may be right on some issues, like you mentioned. He doesn't, but he's not talking about those issues. He's what he's talking about is what he's not talking about. He's all the time implying that there should be a council, there should be a system, there should be a law that sets the agenda for the people who are progressive. And it seems that he thinks he's the one who should decide about that. Like his whole, this debate they had on the second episode is about, they focus on this example of Jesse Singer, who writes about the transitioning. Mm-hmm. And his idea that, I think because they had this Twitter spat with Glenn Greenwald after Jesse Singer was criticized by GLAAD, a pro-trans organization. Glenn criticized GLAAD, and then Nathan Robinson criticized Glenn. And all his, like, whenever he talks about Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, Crystal Ball, whenever he talks about all these people, he never talks about the things they talk about that much, as much as the fact that, oh, you're making the right wing is stronger. Oh, you're agreeing with the right wing. How am I agreeing with the right wing? Even if I am agreeing with the right wing, is everything that the right wing person says ever wrong? If they say Earth is not flat, I'm agreeing with the right wing. Earth is not flat. I'll just give you an example, because that's, and then talk about drama and all that. For example, this is doing an exact quote from his tweet regarding a Matt Taibbi. Do you want to read? Maybe you should read the Matt Taibbi.
I'm not sure if I have this one. Go ahead, read it.
It's the Fox News one.
But why don't you read it if you have
it? So Matt Taibbi wrote, Fox News is one channel that no longer represents real institutional political influence in this country anymore. The financial, educational, political elite with all the power is on the other side, and I think they're the people to be worrying about. I don't completely agree, because I do think some Christian right-wing groups still have institutional political power, but I think it's a largely reasonable point. Maybe not, whatever. But look at Nathan Robinson. Two examples, though the piece goes much deeper. Taibbi repeats the right-wing talking point that all the power is on the other side, and Fox News has no influence. This ignores the entire court system, state governments, and the Senate. The right can block almost anything. So again, as I said, I don't think that quote is right. There are a lot of Christian right-wing organizations that do have power, but he doesn't engage in that. He does mention a state and federal government, which again, we all agree. First of all, I think when they wrote that, when they wrote that the Congress wasn't fully controlled by the Democrats. What about now? And by the way, are Democrats not right-wingers? What according to most of the world, Democrats are right-wingers.
He wouldn't. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a few points to add, actually. I don't know if you wanted to
Sorry, I
continue.
have a slight technical difficulty. I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, can you hear me now?
I'm just fixing. Yeah, sorry about this, but yeah, just my whole thing. I went off, but yeah, well, I don't think anybody considers. Maybe it's a discussion over definitions, because I don't consider
No,
Democrats
not at
left
all.
wingers. I consider them as slightly. Yeah,
I mean, it's
and
funny that you
yeah,
said.
I
Oh,
mean,
sorry, I thought you were done with your points.
no, it's just I highly suggest. I just don't think this person is really arguing the issues. For example, the detransitioning thing. People can watch today's video for themselves, but he is strawmans Glenn Greenwald in real time, which is quite interesting. And again, I don't understand what's his point at the end. At the end, okay, you're what you want to have everybody check with you before they publish. Sorry, Mr. Robinson, I just wrote 3 articles about how good gay people are. May I write one about how bad gay people are? What there is, like, everybody has a bias, right? Everybody has a bias. That doesn't mean you have to have an agenda. And I think, yeah, I think just because he has an agenda, everything he writes, he thinks everybody has an agenda. But no, everybody has bias. They have a type of, but they see things, they describe them. They don't necessarily think 3 moves ahead like some people and try to indirectly imply censorship, indirectly imply control in name of protecting minorities, which, I mean, the whole argument, like, for example, he goes on about the transitioning. They are focusing on the negative. 24/7, the media is filled with positive stories about transitioning. And then he's like, oh, there's too much focus on the negative side. And other examples. I don't mean on this, maybe I'm wrong on this specific issue. But it's just, I don't like this. Come out and say it. You want to control, you want people to check with you what they write beforehand, or with a council or whatever. That's what you want, right? Because you don't talk about the substance that much. I looked at Jesse Singer's book, and I really think he put so many caveats. He put so many ifs and buts. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
Nothing. I just want to add a few things to what you're saying. And one of them is, I'm sorry if we come off as if our ideas and we're all over the place, but I blame Nathan Robinson on that, because the podcast was all over the place. His article, I swear I tried reading like 4 times, 5 times. Maybe I'm not smart enough. It's all over the place. Exactly. I guess his main point, if any, is, okay, don't go on right wing. I guess that's like his main point. Or he wants, when you go on it, to always be adversarial. And that's one thing I want to highlight. So Glenn was also trying to say that I'm not trying to go on Fox News to have a got you moment, because if you do that, you're not going to be invited against. But we can debate the merit of it. But Glenn thinks establishing this kind of, relationship will be more effective, because if you go, you'll have one got you moment, which is cool. It will go on the internet, but they're not going to call Glenn again. And then, so that's why, because Nathan is like, here, but hold on, let me finish. But because he says, Nathan goes like, you see, here you said, what's his name? Ben Carlson said, blah, blah, blah. And you said, agreed, and went on. And then Glenn was trying to make the point that I'm not there just to get him. And hey, I agreed with what he said there. Maybe you think that I didn't agree, but I'm not going to just fight back every single thing that the person says, because then I'll be invited once or 2 times. But I think if I go and talk a lot, there's a good chance that maybe, I'll attract some more people towards, what I think are better policies and issues. So yeah, go ahead.
No, to be honest, if there is a got you moment, if one of them suddenly says, maybe Hitler was a good guy, of course you should got you that guy there. Like, what the fuck? No, you have to be adversarial at that moment. But then I'll go on Tucker Carlson's show, and for example, the issue at hand is immigration. And no, we have to talk about football. We have to talk about football. There was that famous Norwegian or Danish scientist that I hate, Rutger. He became famous because of that. He went on Fox News or something, and they kept asking him about something, and it's no different to me than when a right-wing politician tries to, they ask him about economy and talks about family values or something. It's no different than from that. Secondly, to be honest, I'm not a big believer in the fact that Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore, they'll convince a lot of people by going on Fox News or anything. But first of all, it's boring to talk to people who you always agree with. I don't understand how these people work, but I find that very boring to 24/7. Oh, you think this is good too? Me too. Anyway, that's one thing. Second of all, they may get paid for it, so fuck you. They do it, if they invite me somewhere and they want to, and they get exposure. They get exposure for sure, even if they don't change mind. Second, if all of that besides, it's been what, 20 years, 30 years since Fox News has been on. If you really believe that, go do a research, prove that these appearances has a negative effect on Fox News audience or has a positive or whatever. Do some research, just out of your ass. I think your appearances on the Fox News legitimizes them and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, good for you, good for your opinion. It's just such again, I don't understand what he wants to do besides putting up a state censorship or a council of guardians or something. I don't understand how he wants to resolve other people having different opinions to him, because his major problem seems to be that, they have different opinions to me.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of the things, they're like, you agree with this, I don't agree with that. It's just on that point, and they kind of have a back and forth. But yeah, people, his article, if you want to go read it, Current Affairs, the website is beautiful. So that's great. I found it to be all over the place. And it's one thing that you mentioned. It's funny. You said about the Democrats, everybody knows they're right and all that. He calls them the left. And I don't understand why we've started referring to Democrats as the left. They have a good name. It's called Democrats, and everybody knows what you're referring to. So stop calling them left, even if you think they are or they're not. It's just confusing when you start. I just find it confusing. They're the Democrats. Everybody knows who you're talking about.
Sure. I got into a slight YouTube comment thingy with one of our commenters. Do you remember many months ago when I said TYTR? Maybe he meant it within the American context of politics. But I agree. But then, Democrats are to the left of Republicans on certain social issues, maybe if the weather is good and if, nobody's around. So, you're right. But it's out of habit, it may happen. So I apologize.
I just find it confusing.
But categorizing Democrats as even remotely good guys, like they are in many ways worse than Republicans. I think so. Anyway, a lot of other people think so that are under, and you may not agree with that. But just because we say this, we are not emboldening Nazis. It's just such a massive jump to the conclusion.
I mean, just by being good cop, that could be why you can say they're worse, because they try to fool people more, even though their final objectives are very similar to the Republicans, although they present themselves differently, and there are some differences, of course.
They're better managers. Usually they're much better managers. Obama was a better imperial, as I think Chomsky puts it, imperial manager or something, was an imperial manager than Trump was, definitely. But that's not a good thing necessarily. And by the way, mentioning Chomsky, another thing I hate about this guy, and he does that in one of his tweets about the thing. Sorry, I'm being personal for no reason. I don't know the guy, and I just disagree with him vehemently on certain issues. Sorry for that. Can you hear me? And another thing is he keeps appealing to Noam Chomsky. And I like Noam Chomsky. I love his books. He's been an influence, great man. Much, anything I say is stupid compared to what he says. Well, I'm a human being, and no two human being agree. Glenn Greenwald is a human. He keeps trying to bring, and Matt Taibbi says that in an interview with Primo channel. It's a new YouTube leftist channel I quite like. Primo, I don't know. But Matt Taibbi says Noam Chomsky is not the Pope, and he's not the arbiter of truth. And it's very rude, to be honest, to Noam Chomsky to put him in this position. He keeps as Noam Chomsky says, as that's okay, no more debate then. It's not, and it puts him in the awkward position as well, because what is he, the like his words are not written in stone. It's not like God spoke to Moses and shall it be. But these tactics, these weaselly tactics, really get on my nerve. But not to criticize. Like, I'm sure, by the way, at the end, Noam Chomsky is probably right about some issues that I disagree with him. But I can't change. It is what it is. I can't change it. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same, especially about Noam Chomsky.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the Noam Chomsky one, exactly. He uses the Noam Chomsky example for two things specifically. For why Trump is the worst. No, one of them is why Trump is the worst criminal of all time. And he says Noam Chomsky agrees with that. And I don't even see how you can make that statement without at least saying why you think he's worse than George Bush. I mean, just on the numbers alone.
No, he does talk about the environmental stuff a lot, and yeah, exactly. He keeps saying me and Chomsky think, fuck off.
So let me continue with the environmental. The other one is exactly, he uses Chomsky's climate thing, because Chomsky says what Trump has done to the climate is the worst thing. But climate change, if I understand, is a process that goes back 300 years. You're telling me Trump, I know he got out of the Paris Agreement, whether if he was in the Paris Agreement, if there were any differences. And I know he did some things for the environment. He cut off some regulations, which could lead to pollution here and there. But impacting climate change in 4 years, I mean, him and Chomsky, based on what I'm seeing, they make it seem like Trump is the reason why there is climate change. I mean, I find that one to be really a hard issue to actually pin it on Trump, because it's such a long-term thing.
I don't know. I remember Chomsky talking about this, and in that sense, maybe he has a point. There is a very limited window of maybe 10 to 20 years if we are not going to see complete environmental catastrophe. And in that sense, 4 more years of Trump may have been maybe not, as you say, he's not the cause, he's not the thing, or maybe, but it may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, basically. But I disagree with that, but I'm just saying maybe that's the argument, because we have such a short window. I personally think we are already far beyond that, to be honest. And it's at this point, I personally am just thinking about finding the highest place with water to live, because I genuinely think within the next 20 years, it's already happening. Canada is burning. Japan is being, there are floods in Japan, washing whole cities off. In Iran, in the south, there's no water anymore. People are dying. Forests everywhere. So I think it's just the environmental issue, the most noble issue of our age, in my view. It's over. We've lost, and that's my take. But I think their take would be, because we had such a brief window. If there was 4 more years of Trump, and then he would have, there was a greater chance of another 8 years of like a Republican presidency. And I believe, I'm not sure about this, people can correct me, Chomsky may believe, and I kind of believe that if Trump had another 4 years, he may have made a serious move towards, I doubt it because he's so lazy and incompetent, but there was a chance, like if there was, like he may have made a move to become sort of a president for life type thing. Or
I haven't,
maybe
in his 4 years, he demonstrated that he can wreck things, right? He can come out of the Paris Agreement, but he didn't show one example where he can build or change something, exactly, like change it in a way so he can be like president for life and stuff. There was no indication that he had any of these capabilities of putting 2 or 3 things together.
No, there was no indication he had any of these capabilities, but he did talk about it a lot. Because the 12 more years, 16 more years.
Man, like, come on, like his attempt of delegitimizing the election was pathetic. I mean, he lost big time. Like, it didn't go anywhere. It was absolutely
pathetic.
Sure.
But he did. No, I know, but he Yeah, I agree. He was incompetent and pathetic, but I'm just saying that's not the view they share, and they might say, okay, he was pathetic and idiot, but somebody like Mike Pence, who has strong ties to Christian militia groups and Christian crazy people, they may guide him. They just use him as a puppet. Again, I don't agree with any of this. I'm just saying that, yeah, you're like the environmental issues. Yeah, I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
I,
the
I, I
environment.
agree with you. I just wanted to give them a fair representation. That's all.
Yeah,
As fair as I can, at least.
okay, so I think we've spent way too much time on this story now. Even the quotes, I don't know if we should go over them because you actually went over my favorite quote, which was the first one about Fox News. So I mean, I think if we go through
Mhm.
all the other ones, we're going to be here for another hour. So
Yeah, but I mean, uh,
I
I
don't
think
know if
one of them,
is there anyone in particular?
like, yeah, like the Matt Taibbi one. Look, listen to this. Woke leftists are capitalists. Jamie Dimon kneeling and Nancy Pelosi in a I don't know connect cloth, a scarf are perfect symbols of the union. So look, Matt Taibbi is talking about woke leftist. He's not talking about all of the left. He's not talking about everybody who's a socialist. He's talking about woke leftists. So that's and there's another one with Greenwald about the cultural left,
Mhm.
meaning the part of the left focused on culture rather than imperialism or corporation. So yeah, I mean, they target a specific group in the left when they're criticizing them. They don't do a wishy-washy, you know,
Mhm.
rambling on
100%.
article.
And since you really read the Fox News one, I mean, that's the one I was more actually had the most opinion about. So when he wrote Fox News is one channel that no longer represents real institutional political influence in this country anymore, I really agree with that because I think they peaked maybe 10 to 12 years ago. And then they had two of their major people taken, like one of them passed away and the other one is,
No, no,
I don't know what. And then, but let me finish.
Bill,
Yeah.
sexual misconduct,
Yeah. So
both
they
of them
had two
sexual
of their
misconduct.
big guys removed. And then I know that Nathan Robinson, for instance, says, look, the Fox News were directly like influencing policy during the Trump era. I agree. During the Trump era, they had this like direct link. They would say, and then Trump would pick those things up. So even if that is true, it's over. So I definitely agree with Matt Taibbi here now that it no longer represents. They've definitely
Uh,
lost a lot of influence and power, Fox News, over recent
uh,
years.
I completely and wholeheartedly disagree, and I don't think they ever had any influence, and they still don't have any influence. During Trump years, I don't think they had any influence. Just because some president claimed, again, just like the argument we had right now, right? Trump said a lot of things that was like 16 more years, 18 more years, that type of thing that clearly could imply, just because Fox News implies they have a good relationship with the, it's like the Ukraine policy, for example. They keep saying under Trump, US was much harsher on Ukraine and was softer than Russia. Not true at all. Any unbiased, I would say, analyst would say that under Biden they became much tougher and sorry, they are becoming a bit more conciliatory towards Russia with the arm deals and all that. So I don't accept that sorry at all. That they peaked 10 years ago in terms of popularity. That's all. Popularity has nothing to do with power or influence. I would say they're like all of these organizations are propaganda organizations, and I think Fox News is funded by the military-industrial complex and Christian Zionists and Christian nut jobs, basically, and they are still representing them, and they're still doing that same old shit. And I think they have some institutional support and power, but yeah, but not the biggest. No, for sure. Right now, the biggest are Silicon Valley people and that type of thing. But no, I just don't think they ever had any influence whatsoever. They're just like a state a state news agency in Soviet countries where
Yes, I
like
mean, I would
they
say
represent a
probably
group and they repeat them.
probably due to their popularity and how connected they were to the Republican Party. I would push back and I would assume that they had more influence back then, but I don't have any evidence
No,
right now
okay.
to
Look,
show
no,
you
no, no.
or something like
No,
that.
no. I look. Roger Ailes was a former Nixon official, if I'm not mistaken. The Republican Fox News was an outgrowth of Republican Party,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So yeah, they always had that, and they still have that. I just don't think
Perhaps
anything
less now, I
significant.
would say.
Yeah, I just don't think also because right now on YouTube and on all these Vice and all of these 24/7 on Disney Plus, everywhere you're 24/7, you just see trans people and you see leftists and you see woke people and you see all of that. I just don't think because of that they lost all institutional power, or because Joe Biden is in prison. Joe Biden is not that much more to the left of Trump. So I don't see, yeah, again, but then again, I mean, that's a side discussion. But I don't think they've lost all institutional power.
Okay, fair enough. I say we leave that at there. And the next story actually complements this story very well. So pretty much
I caused the last segment to overrun it by 30 minutes.
It's all good. I mean, we're just here to have some fun with the progressive world, more or less. Even I think today's story has much more, I mean, today's episode has much more substance than usual. But so Glenn Greenwald, and this story like goes very well with the previous one. So Glenn Greenwald covered this, that pretty much Rachel Maddow's lawyers, right? They were trying to sue Rachel Maddow or whatever, what's his name? The news organization OAN was trying to sue them because Rachel Maddow said that they are literally, she used this word literally, sorry, Russian paid actors, right? So she put it that way. She said literally they're Russian paid propagandists. So then to defend themselves in court, right? Rachel Maddow and MSNBC's lawyer, to defend themselves in court, they came and said, listen, everybody knows that this is the Rachel Maddow show and facts are not a thing. People are here for her opinion. So the fact that this was absolute bullshit and these accusations are not true doesn't matter. And then Glenn Greenwald points this out. This is the exact same defense that Ben Carlson and Fox News had given for him. And then the left keep on trying to use Tucker Carlson, sorry. And the left try to keep on always using that excuse. You see, even Fox News says that they're bullshit and they're not news, but you go on there. Why do you do that? So here, let me read
Alex Jones used the same argument. It's entertainment.
Yeah,
it's entertainment.
Exactly. So she used
By the way, same with us.
And I mean, they won the case. MSNBC won the case. And this is what the judge said. Viewers expect her to do so. So meaning expect for her to interject her opinion. And it is indeed her show. And viewers watch the segment with the understanding that it will contain Maddow's personal and subjective views about the news. Thus, the court finds that as the part of the totality of the circumstances, the broad context weighs in favor of a finding that the alleged defamatory statement is Maddow's opinion and exaggeration of the Daily Beast article, and that reasonable viewers would not take that statement as factual. So the judge is like, yes, I agree.
I would say 100% of times, usually, I agree with the case that like defamation and libel, in my view, are so stupid usually. But in this specific case, actually, I have some content. I would say just because she used the word literally, you know, like that changed the game for me. Because, you know, like usually people are smart enough. Alex Jones is smart enough to, although not all the time, but they're smart enough to not use the word literally, because that's the whole, like, that's where the case hinged. Because if you do say they're paid by Russians, then you can say it's my opinion they were paid by Russians. Otherwise, why would they do this? Or why would they do that? But when you say they literally paid by Russians, but I would say, to be fair to the, like, I think she should have been fined, but yeah, whatever. But I would say, to be fair, if people, like, I appreciate Glenn and all these people highlighting their hypocrisy. And he points out, for example, Brian Stetler or whatever, he's on CNN, the guy who kind of looks like an egg, and he's he does the
media
unbiased corner or something. He's awful. He's awful. And he tweeted after Tucker Carlson verdict, he tweeted, "Look, even his producers admit he should be silenced," and blah blah blah. It's good to point to all these things out, but I do think, I mean, if you, or like, people seem to like, they watched her. She has like 4 or 5 million viewers, and they are more, rather than viewers, we should probably call them cultists. Same with Tucker Carlson, by the way. These, like, for example, these cable shows, I think in Max, they have 5 million views or something. So they have their cult, and their cult follows them. And sadly, like, if you don't, like, if you haven't known Rachel Maddow is a liar and just a showman, then I don't know if now you're going to be enlightened.
Well, they're not going to hear about this, and they probably don't think so. So like Glenn Greenwald said that he disagrees with the ruling, that their viewers probably don't know that it's bullshit, and I agree with that. I mean, they probably think that she said,
but if you can't figure that out,
Yeah.
I think you're just not that intelligent. So it's good, it's okay, watch that, and hopefully don't work.